Security, escort this gentleman out, please.
Come on, Soda Pop, let's go.
So we will call the meeting to order. First item of business will be the approval of minutes of our June 30th quarterly meeting. Those minutes are presented for you, and I would entertain either a motion for approval or any additions, deletions, or corrections.
Move approval.
Thank you. I have a motion for approval. Do we have a second?
I second.
And we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approval, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes stand approved as printed. Our item of business today is a request for an advisory opinion filed July 25th of 2016. You each have a copy of that in front of you. It was provided to each of you, I assume. You have it. The media and representatives in the room, I assume you have copies, or they're on the back table there for you to look at. So we also have Galen Smith on the phone. Is that true?
That's true, yes.
Okay, Galen, will you, for the benefit of the board, walk through verbally your request for advisory opinion?
Certainly. As you all know, in July, it was a pretty violent time for police officers in the country, both in Dallas and Baton Rouge, with the loss of 8 officers in shootings. During that time, we received just a tremendous amount of support from the community here in Sioux Falls, from just various ways. Letters of support, emails, handshakes, anywhere we go, we just received a tremendous amount of support from our community, which we're thankful for. What we did receive that we're looking for an advisory opinion from the board is 2 local churches in Sioux Falls dropped off handwritten thank you cards to the amount of about 300. One church dropped off 100 cards, and another church dropped off 100 cards for a total of 300. She dropped them off to our administrative assistant up here, and when she opened the first card, she noticed that there was a gift card in it. And so then she put it back, and in another bag from the other church, she opened one of those up, and there was also a gift card on there. So we reached out to the churches and asked if all the cards had gift cards in them, and they do. Our understanding are the ranges are from a $5 gift card to a $25 gift card. All the gift cards are for restaurants, coffee shops, so forth here in Sioux Falls. Our policy within the police department is officers are not allowed to receive anything monetary value. I'll just read what the policy says. For soliciting or accepting anything of value that arises from or is offered because of employment by the city, except food or beverage that may be immediately consumed, shall not be permitted. We have some local restaurants in Sioux Falls that will, when our officers go there on breaks, we'll give them free soda, free coffee. I don't think we have any restaurants in town that allow free food anymore. The hospitals do. So officers, when they're on their breaks, will be allowed to have a free beverage in the restaurant along with that. However, the gift cards is of monetary value, although it would be a consumable object at a later point. So we're just looking for clarification from the advisory board on whether it's distributed as cards for police department. The 300 would would be allowed for all sworn officers and civilian employees in Sioux Falls, for everybody to get a card. So that wouldn't be an issue.
Okay, thank you, Galen. I'm going to ask each of the members of the board to respond, and then we'll, after everybody's had a quick chance to share some of their observations and feelings, we'll go back to specific questions and discussion. We'll go from there. So, Jack, we'll start with you since you're remote. We want to make sure that we hear your thoughts.
Thank you, Greg. Assistant Chief Smith, you outlined what are the current regulations of the police department. I wonder if David, if you might tell us what are the what other regulations and rules guidelines are provided by the city of Sioux Falls regarding accepting of gifts by any employees, any city employees.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Jack. The relevant ordinance is section 35.029. Part A says, no officer or employee shall directly or indirectly solicit any gift or accept any gift, whether in the form of money, services, loan, travel, entertainment, hospitality, thing or promise, or any other form, under circumstances in which it could reasonably be inferred that the gift was intended to influence or could reasonably be expected to influence the officer or employee in the performance of official duties or was intended as a reward for any official action. Part C creates an exception where it says it is not a conflict of interest for any official or employee to receive a gift or gratuity that is an unsolicited item of nominal intrinsic value. We have had prior boards of ethics that have opined on, especially with police and fire, receiving unsolicited gift cards and the like, where I think the board has had some discussion is in terms of creating an actual threshold of what's nominal intrinsic value, or do it on a case-by-case basis. I know our board previously had some discussion about whether you wanted to create a threshold, so I kind of encouraged Assistant Chief Schmidt to maybe present this issue to you so that this would give you that opportunity to have that discussion. So the fault is mine, I guess, if you want to point the finger of blame. But the other opinions from the past have basically, they were like $25 or $50 gift cards, and the board said those were acceptable if they were unsolicited. There was one instance where there was a gift card and then there was a pencil set or something, and the board thought maybe you're going a little too far at that point, accept one or the other but not both. So those are kind of the prior decisions and kind of the tenor of them. So the real buzzwords are unsolicited gift of nominal intrinsic value.
Greg, are you looking for our observations and opinions at this point, or do you want to continue the questioning? I do have some thoughts.
Look, I think we want your thoughts and observations, and then we'll go on to the other questions.
Yeah, first of all, I think the outpouring of support from the community for our police department is I think it's welcome, and it is. I'm sure that our public servants deeply appreciate it, and I think those gift cards and those handwritten notes, I'm sure, were offered with all the best intentions. I, however, believe that this is when any city official or city employee receives a gift, it should or accepts a gift, we should proceed very cautiously, because what is the cutoff for what we would regard as a nominal, unsolicited, minimal intrinsic value? What is that threshold? What do we regard as unsolicited? Based on what I heard the assistant chief say, as well as what I heard David Feithel say, I think this is a pretty clear case where the gifts should not be accepted, because I think you could be into a very slippery slope. What happens if I, as an individual, maybe I use downtown parking quite a bit, and the very conscientious parking enforcement officers. Maybe I think that they do such a great job that I should, maybe I could provide a gift card to them, and maybe my intentions aren't quite so pure. Let's just play a devil's advocate here. What about if I'll tell you a personal situation. I recently got a building permit for some work at my home. What if I thought that the work done by the plumbing inspector, the electrical inspector, and others was so good that I think it would be a nice gesture for me to provide a gift card to them. You can see where this is going. You know, what, even though it's unsolicited, I think we're opening up a real can of worms here if we allow police department or any department to accept gifts of monetary value. I think the police department is sound in saying, okay, if it's a consumable item, you know, someone bakes cookies and delivers them to the police department or delivers them to the fire department for that matter, as a thank you, unsolicited, nominal value. I think those should be, common sense should prevail, and you accept those graciously. But this is what we're talking about here. It is actually not a nominal value, I think it sets a very poor precedent. My recommendation would be that, and I'd like to hear from others because I'm trying to keep an open mind on this, but right now my feeling would be that the police department would be better off either taking those gift cards and donating them to a nonprofit in town or agency that could then distribute those to people in need, or of course simply graciously ask the churches take back the gift cards. That's where I would stand on it. I think you have to be. You can't start down that slippery slope. So that's my position at this point. Unless
Okay, thank you, Jack.
make better arguments.
Thank you, Jack. We'll go on to the next board member. I'm going to ask Wanda to share her feelings.
First, a question for Mr. Smith. Has this happened before on such a widespread scale where there would be one event where there would be a gift provided to everybody? I think you mentioned, or David mentioned, it may happen case by case, but do you have any precedent where this has happened on such a widespread scale?
I've been here 24 years, and I have not seen this number before. We have officers receive gift cards from people while they're a big boy, and our officers will ask them thank you, but no thanks. Or just ask them to leave the gift card with the business, and the officer will have their coffee or bagel. But the business will swipe on you if you have it. I've never seen it going.
Okay. Because my concern with this is, while, on an individual basis, someone might say $5 isn't that much or $25 isn't that much, but when you aggregate it, the total amount, and you're only talking about it coming from two sources, that is quite a bit of a monetary value of a gift coming from one particular source. And so for that reason, I would tend to say that this would not be appropriate, in addition to some of the other comments that Jack made, which I would agree with as well. And the fact that Mr. Smith pointed out that while the city ordinance has some guidelines, I think the police department has a very specific policy on this.
Thank you, Wanda. Jeff?
May I ask, this is Jeff Janowski, is just a couple questions. Which two churches, if I may ask?
I have difficulty hearing that question.
He asked for the names of the two churches involved in
King of Glory and Linwood Westwood.
Okay. I recognize and acknowledge the slippery slope that everyone talks about. I think of this perhaps slightly differently. I do think that the statute allows for the de minimis or a nominal gift given generally to the department. I do think, Jack, some of your examples that you raised probably creates more of the impression of some appearance of impropriety, at least, where it's in the gift card is given in connection with some specific act that's done. In this case, given that it's a general gift by two churches, unrelated to any specific incident with police, just an outpouring of support, I think that there's an argument that the police department can make in this case to accept those gifts, given the fact that I do think you can define a nominal value, and I think $25 at the outset or at the outmost is within that. But I certainly recognize everyone else's comments. I do think that it's open to interpretation. Your policy reads one way. I don't know if there's an exception or variance to the policy that's allowed, but I do differ in the approach to this from at least Jack and Wanda's comments, and I do think that there's probably some latitude here, given that it's not specifically related to an incident or interaction with the police department in these two churches.
Thank you, Jeff. So I have a couple of thoughts that I'd like to share. Some of the things that I think make this interesting is, as David read from the code, the interesting words are solicit or accept. These are certainly not solicited, but they are, obviously, we're talking about whether or not we should accept them. So I'm thinking about that as to whether, the next part was whether there could be an inferred quid pro quo there. Whether or not the gift or in some way expects some special consideration. I don't believe that that's the case, in that these are obviously a project in a church where someone said, write a thank you card and put a gift card in it, and hundreds of people within that church, each individually, wrote a thank you card and put a gift card in it and sealed it and put it in a basket. And they were aggregated a little bit like, when I was in grade school, we wrote thank you notes to servicemen on Veterans Day, and they went into a basket and off they went. So it's not a personal thing. And to me, that's very important. As I've talked before about the difference between rules-based things and principles-based things. Ethics are, in my opinion, principles-based. So, David, you're going to wait for a very long time if you're waiting for me, as I'm chair, to ask this group to define de minimis, because by definition, de minimis has a specific meaning, which includes facts and circumstances. So, if, for example, one were to say $25, that's de minimis. The mayor could be at a national conference where they're in a very upscale hotel and there is a reception, and the cocktail that he is offered may well cost more than $25. And it is absolutely, in that case, 100 couple people in the room, that's a de minimis gift. On the other hand, handing the parking meter person, Jack, in your example, a $25 gift card as they're coming to your car to write you a ticket is, in my opinion, not de minimis. So I'm not at all interested in setting a dollar threshold. The fact that these are indirect, not personal, no one knew who was going to get which card. When the police department hands these out to their employees, some people are going to get 5, some are going to get 25. And you have no way of knowing that. I assume, Galen, that they're not opened and won't be until you hand them out. So, this is a matter of, to me, it's completely innocent and completely de minimis, and it's indirect rather than personal. So, my opinion would be that we would tell the PD to proceed, and we're certainly not going to go out to other churches and say, hey, we think this is a great idea, why don't you do it more often? But I certainly have no problem with it. Galen, I did have one comment that I would like to point out, that I was a little bit alarmed with the example that you gave for an officer receiving a gift card and saying to the person, I can't take the gift card, but just leave it at the business, and when we'll come back, they'll just swipe the card. That is clearly a form over substance issue. And I would encourage your officers to not do that, because if that amount were in fact not de minimis, I think there would be danger that someone would, because there's really no difference in taking the card, putting it in your billfold, or leaving it at the place of business and saying, hi, my name's Bob, you've got a card back there for me. So I would be concerned about that.
Very good.
Other thoughts and comments from board members?
Well, let me respond to that, Greg, and as well as Jeff's comments. I believe the motives are actually secure on the parts of these two congregations providing these gifts. That's not the issue. I think, these innocent impulsive use. The problem is, are we going to tell the police department, well, every time that you consider accepting gifts of this order, you have to come back to the ethics board, because we have to make sure that indeed the motives are pure and that we're signing off on the organization. To me, it is irrelevant what organization is giving the gift. Are we going to say that, well, they're okay with churches, but we want to be able to, what about if it's another organization? What if it's a special interest group that just decides that, hey, we really ought to show appreciation to the police department. So let's pass the hat and let's provide gift cards to every sworn police officer in the city. And then, maybe it's could be any number of organizations, some of which may not be quite so innocent. I think we are really opening up a can of worms here if we decide that we're going to allow this, because in effect we trust the two organizations, the two churches that are making the gift. Because the next time that a gift of this type is offered, the group may not be so quite so innocent. So I say you apply the rules and regulations uniformly, regardless of the organization, and I say the gifts should not be accepted.
Okay, thank you, Jack.
Jack, I appreciate all those thoughts, and I do think there's a distinction though when you have the church giving it anonymously, if you will, through these contributions from their parishioners, as opposed to a special interest group. And in that instance, the statute would say that if the gift was given in an attempt to influence, I think the fact that it comes from a special interest group with an agenda probably changes the facts to the point that it would put it over the line. So I do think that there's an argument that can be made here by the police department to make a variance for this purpose. And I don't think we're going to find ourselves in an instance in which we have to analyze every situation like this, because I do think people and Mr. Schmitz will see those distinctions and be able to make those calls on his own without having to come to the board.
That was one of my questions. So this is kind of a feel-good story, and if people kind of pick up on this, what if this continues to happen? Then at what point does it become not de minimis? And that's something that I would worry about. This is a great story. It's that the intentions are good, but what if it continues to happen and the amounts maybe go up, or just in aggregate become higher? I would be concerned about that. I have another question maybe for David. In their role as employees of the city, this is recognition of their job. Would this be taxable income to the officers?
I don't think so.
I know, and In my role in private industry, it would be, and I just didn't know.
No,
I'll defer to the CPA.
Yeah.
I tell you,
Yeah.
no,
Okay.
it's de minimis,
Yeah.
and it's a gift.
In our organization, we tend to tax it because if it adds up, if a police officer gets a $5 card here, the next month might get a $10, the next month gets a $25. And I'm not saying that would happen, I'm just saying there's a risk of that happening, and then, we may have a different problem to consider. And then, Mr. Smith, could you read your policy again?
Sure. We have a purpose and the policy. Well, what I read was part one of the procedure. So I'll read, there's 2 small paragraphs of the policy and 2 for the procedure. So I'll read both of those. 2.1 of the policy states, it is the policy of the city of Sioux Falls that employees do not use their official position or the knowledge granted therein in such a manner that a conflict between the city's interest and their personal interest shall arise. And I think that's more what Mr. Biden was talking about with the city ordinance. Employees shall conduct their affairs so as to avoid any conflict between the personal and outside interest and the interest of the city. So that's the policy. 2 sections of the procedure are as follows. Soliciting or accepting anything of value that arises from or is offered because of employment by the city, except food or beverage that may be immediately consumed, shall not be permitted. Employees shall not use their position to gain special privileges and benefits, including favors, services, and promises of future.
Thank you.
See, to me, that clearly would rule out the police department accepting these.
Yeah.
cards.
To me, it does too, that sentence right before, except for immediate consumable, that's where I have concern.
So my problem with this is, I think while the arguments are good, I think we might be tending to awfulize the situation. We're asked to opine on this situation, not all other situations that might happen in the future, and what if. It's impossible to deal with hypothetical things. I'm not interested in trying. If you think about what's really happening here, it is simply a matter of form over substance. If these churches had taken, so we have, let's say, $3,000, and if these churches had been more well organized and went to some restaurant, read it out and said, we want little gift cards that's good for a meal. And we took those cards and handed them out and just said, all you gotta do as an officer is go show your ID at this restaurant. We've paid the restaurant, and just go show your ID and they'll give you a free meal. We allow them. We allow them to accept a free meal if it is consumed at the time. So we're all hung up on when was the meal paid for, was it consumed on premises, and we're overlooking the fact that if we would do exactly the same thing with a tiny change in the form, we would change the substance at all. So I remain pretty convinced that this is a perfectly appropriate thing for the police department to do, and I would encourage them, and I'm sure that Matt and Galen are at running the PD would be very quick to say, if a church called them and said, "Can we do this as a project?" they say, "Please don't do that as a project. Do something else." So, those are my comments. I would be in favor of approving it. Any other thoughts from the board?
I will add, my initial concern about the total amount of this gift coming from 2 sources, I think somewhere along the line, someone clarified that for me. This is, the churches are not presenting the gift as being from the church. It's they facilitated a large number of individuals writing individual thank yous. Is that a correct way to assess the situation, Mr. Smith? Is that more accurate, so to speak?
To clarify your question, it was more of the thank you by individuals in the church, is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Right, instead of from the church as an entity itself.
Right, yeah,
Okay.
right, yeah, there's individuals, we just opened one for each, and both of them were just a small thank you card, the little ones that you give at the wedding or graduation, thank you. And both of them were handwritten, thank you for what you do, and your sacrifice, and all that kind of stuff, and then they get cards inside, so they're each personalized.
So that were they signed by an individual?
Yeah,
Okay.
no, they weren't signed by an individual, each card, they were just anonymous thank you cards.
Oh,
That's even better.
yeah, I feel better about it than I was looking at this in the context of the church is kind of, this is from, King of Glory Church. And again, when you add all of those gift cards together from one source, to me, that was different. But if it's anonymous on an individual basis, I would have less of an issue.
Is the word ready to?
Can I give one more fact, if I may,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman? Assistant Chief Schmidt, I think he may have forgotten that back in, right after the 9/11 tragedy happened, a couple local groups did give $10 gift certificates to all the police and fire, all the members of those two departments. And the Board of Ethics found that that was unsolicited, nominal value, and your predecessors did allow that gift to occur, but they did ask for an advisory opinion on that instance as well.
Thank you, Mr. President. If there are no other comments from the board, I'm going to ask for public input. Mr. Danielson.
Bruce Danielson. I just wanted to bring up last night the city council with the mayor's tie-breaking vote confirmed ethics is important in the city of Sioux Falls when it comes to campaign contributions and a possible appearance of any kind of a conflict. And I wanted to make that as part of this discussion also, because this becomes a slippery slope, as Jeff was saying, for the future. We don't know where this is going to lead, what's going to happen as a result of something like this. And I really do believe that in a situation like this, we could have this group here wanting to donate this little bit, this group here could donate this one, and maybe these are going to be gift certificates or cash cards for a specific store that all of a sudden they gain an economic advantage. There's a lot of situations here that this leans on the side of potential conflicts of interest that are going to be very difficult to handle in the future. I've watched it in several things since I've been involved in politics in the last 50 years, and this type of thing really concerns me. We have many different ways that this can be handled. I have, maybe I missed it, the construction out here and the noise and everything, it's kind of hard, but what type of cards are these? Are they just regular debit cards or prepaid or to the store or what?
Mr. Schmidt said that the cards were from various restaurants in the local area.
Okay, so now that leads to the problem. We have different restaurants in town that are doing this, and we don't know if they are contributing. Are these restaurants contributing part of the cost? Are they buying them at a discount? Because I've heard of these situations where a restaurant will do it at a discount so they get an economic advantage in the marketing. So it becomes a marketing approach. If it was just a plain $5 prepaid cash card, you could maybe find some logic in this. But I have a real concern when it could be for, XYZ restaurant versus ABC restaurant. And all of a sudden, all this traffic goes to this restaurant and the additional purchases that happen at restaurants that aren't covered by these types of cards. I have a real problem with that. So even if these parishioners are paying money for these cards, they most likely were given at some kind of a discount so they could get more of a buying power. And what is the total value of the cards? Was that ever stated?
The testimony, Mr. Danielson, was...
I'm sorry.
The testimony was that there are hundreds of individual envelopes that the PD has not opened them. They know, they were told that the value of each individual card ranged from $5 to $25. So
Okay.
we don't know.
And how many of these cards are there?
There are approximately 300.
Okay, so 300 times, let's say $10. So let's just say it's a $10 card. You know, that could, these two churches could take all of those cards, work with those restaurants, and throw some kind of a community event for the police that would be a general event for the police. That could be what you were describing, Greg, with the, Mr. Chair, with the, how did you say, de minimis? De minimis. And then it would be spread about through the community. The churches could come, they could do the hugs, they could do whatever they wanted, and that would probably do more with that $3,000 or more for the community than these individual cards. I find these individual cards to be a huge conflict of interest situation for the police officers, for the restaurants that are offering the cards. I know that most of these restaurants, whoever they are, probably doing it with good graces and they want to do things right. But Jack Marsh was right in what he was saying about it's a real issue here. So I would just like to say that right now as a group that I'm working with, that we're considering asking the Board of Ethics on an issue concerning another situation with the police officers right now with getting meals at the restaurants and some of these other things that are becoming a real concern when you drive past the hospitals, and it even becomes a public relations issue with all of these police cars that are sitting in the emergency room parking lots, filling up the parking lots at meal times. This is kind of that same thing. You know, we have a real issue with all of this stuff going on, and the community is watching. And we're going to be making sure the community knows about the vote that you're having. And, you know, with the reporters in the back of the room, you know, this is important to us. That's why that vote last night at City Council was so important, that we have no appearances of conflict of interest in any of this stuff. Have a community picnic down at Falls Park. It'd be well attended by however much of the community they wanted to do, and it would solve all of these problems, and then people get the idea, let's do it as a group, there's nobody preferred. The other concern that we have for this is, why can't the water department get gift cards? And all of a sudden we're going to have churches wanting, well, the water department, you know, fixed the leak out in front of the building, so now we can go in and do it. You know, it's a huge slippery slope, and I don't think you guys want to deal with that every time somebody wants to do one of these events. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. Any other comments by members of the board?
I would just say this, Greg. I think the regulations and the police department, as well as the ordinance that as Dave read it to us, I think it's clear that city officials and city employees should not be accepting gifts because of normal performance of their duties. And in no way do I want to suggest that the motives were anything but pure on the parts of these two congregations. That's not the issue. But to me, this is really opening up a huge can of worms. If we're going to allow, in this case, what about when it is a special interest group or other organization, or you know, or are we just if it's a different decision, if it's not a church group, but maybe it's you know, maybe it's a different religious organization. I don't know, but I think I would urge the police department to follow its own regulations. And that is, and my interpretation is that you should not do that.
Thank you, Jack. Jeff?
Yeah, and Jack, I really don't disagree with what you said, and I think that given the comments from Mr. Danielson, there's always going to be an interpretive question. People will look at this differently, and they're going to analyze it and look at it from an appearance perspective. And I not only recognize that, I'm glad that we have this discussion. I don't think the statute is quite that clear. I think that the police policy, if it were written differently and in line with the statute, allows for some latitude. But I think the one thing that's clear here is we've got some pretty savvy people who have been involved in a lot of different circumstances, and we can't all agree. And if anything, an individual vote is going to happen, but I think from the police department's perspective, those things have to be taken into account. Mr. Schmidt, I mean, you've heard comments from all of us and from Mr. Danielson, and I think that has to, in part, guide where you go on this, regardless of a vote by the board.
I'm going to ask the board for a motion so that we can decide what we're going to do. So, Jeff, Martha, Jack?
I'll be glad to offer a motion. Move that the Sioux Falls City Board of Ethics advises the police department to not accept the gift cards, despite our feeling that there was nothing, there's no impropriety in terms of the intentions of the organizations, that we feel would be far better if the police department would either return those gift cards or, with the approval of the churches, simply donate them to another organization.
That was quite a motion, Jack. Are you sure that was just a motion? Carrie, do you want to tell Mr. Marsh what his motion looks like written down?
Maybe so.
Maybe simplify. The Sioux Falls City Board of Ethics does not question the motives of the two organizations that have generously provided gift cards, offer gift cards to the police department. However, it is the feeling of this board that the gifts should not be accepted. Period.
Okay, so you've heard a motion. Anybody need that reread? If not, I'll ask for a second.
Can we have a discussion first?
Sure, I'm sorry.
We need a second to have a discussion, sorry.
So the motion dies for lack of a second. Does anyone have a substitute motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll try. I move that the board vote on whether the police department should comply with its written policy that's in place that addresses gift cards.
Just, I can't really, I guess I can't ask questions about that motion. It sounds to me like we're throwing the question back to the police department, and to me that seems unfair.
I think the counter motion should, somebody ought to move that the police department be advised that it's okay to do examples of parents. I would support that motion, but that's what the counter motion would be.
And again, following the formal rules here, the policy is already, I think, dictated the answer based on how it's
So put that in a motion. Is that a yes, we approve, or no, we disapprove? You have to have a motion.
I understand.
Can I state
Go
it
ahead.
differently?
Go ahead.
This may be different from what we're planning to say, but I would move that we follow the letter of the policy of the police department and recommend that these gift cards not to be accepted.
Okay, I'm going to suggest as chair that, I don't know, can I accept the same motion that just died for a lack of a second?
If you can,
And I can,
I'll make it again.
I can tell you why I did not second that.
Okay, go ahead.
Because you stated two organizations, that these gift cards originated from two organizations, and I don't agree with that.
Okay, I'll make a very simplified motion that the Sioux Falls City Board of Ethics recommends that the police department does not accept donated gift cards, period.
Okay, we've heard that motion.
I will second that motion.
So we've heard that motion. There is a motion and a second. Carrie, can you read that motion back, please?
Yep. Motion was that he recommended the police department does not accept the donated gift cards.
Okay. We have that motion and a second. Is there any thoughts or additional discussion regarding that motion? Hearing none, we'll ask for a roll call vote. Jeff?
Aye.
No. I'll call on you when I'm ready, Jeff Marsh. I called on Jeff.
Jay, you only need to vote once. Come on now.
Okay, all right, that's fine.
I have a mute button here.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll vote aye.
We have an aye. Mr. Marsh?
Aye.
Wanda?
Aye.
Should the chair vote?
Yes.
There's no reason for me to vote, and I would only vote to break a tie.
Break a tie, so.
Okay.
You would say?
We do need one other motion that I be allowed to draft an advisory opinion consistent with your discussion and with your ruling that you recommend that the gift cards not be accepted. I have that motion, so I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to request city attorney to draft the appropriate advisory opinion for our final approval. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify aye.
Aye.
Motion passed. Is there any other business to be brought before the board? Seeing none, I call for a motion for adjournment.
Chair, this is Galen.
Yes.
Can I just get clarification that I think I heard it right, that we will not accept the gift cards? And my question is this, would we be allowed to open up the envelopes, take out all the gift cards, and at least allow the officers to receive the thank you notes? We can give them to each officer personally as a note, and then we can contact the church as far as how they want the gift cards handled. Would that be okay with the board?
Yes.
There's a whole bunch of nodding heads, yes.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate that. And I just want to offer, this makes it very clear for us moving forward what we need to do, and I appreciate that. And I also appreciate the fact that, talking to David Pipely, that you guys have recently met, so this was a special session that you got together for. And I just appreciate the time that you took out of your busy schedules to meet on this behalf. On behalf of Chief Hurd tonight, I just want to say thank you to the board for that.
Well, you're very welcome.
Thank you for bringing it to us. We appreciate that. And, when you talk to the churches, they may say, well, go ahead, we'll either take them back, or they may say, let's give them to another organization in honor of this department.
Great idea. Yeah, great idea. I appreciate that, Jack.
Okay, I need a motion for adjournment.
So,
Second.
Aye.
All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you, Jack. Mr. Schmidt, thanks so much.
thank you.
Y'all come back now. Here.
What kind of morons run this outfit?